Okay, good evening. So let's continue with our book, A Philosophy of Mitzvot, the religious ethical concepts of Judaism, their roots in biblical law and the oral tradition, by Gershon Appel, Appel. I hope I'm pronouncing those correctly. I've decided after reading the philosophical portion, I don't want y'all to think I'm afraid of philosophy, but I'm not a philosopher. And I don't really think there was any additional information in the philosophy section. So I've decided just to skip forward through that, excuse me, and move into chapter 3, starting on page 43, the divine purpose. The Hinnock's religious philosophy is based ultimately upon certain historical affirmed premises, which, as formulated by him, serve as necessary predicates to his investigation of the purpose of the mitzvot. Remember, the Hinnock is the anonymous author of the Sefer HaHinuk, and which is the book of education, and basically in an anonymous work, it's named after a portion of the title. So Hinnock is not actually a person, but it is rather the author of the book that we are reading. All right, so continuing under divine purpose, the divine purpose, revelation of the Torah. At the core of Judaism is the belief in the divine origin of the Torah. Divine revelation is, moreover, an established historical fact attested to by the people of Israel. When God wished to give the Torah to his people Israel, the Hinnock states in his introduction, he gave it to them in the presence of 600,000 men and a multitude of children and women, so that they would all be trustworthy witnesses to this event. In the course of time, it became an authenticated tradition handed down by the elders of each generation to the next, establishing thereby an unbroken living chain which enshrined this great tradition in the collective memory of the people Israel. The next little section is called the direct revelation to the people, which basically he goes back over what I just said. In Judaism, we believe that there were numerous witnesses, and in fact, the Torah, the Bible, does state that there were numerous witnesses. In fact, the people got so scared after the first couple of commandments, they said, "You go talk to him. We're not going to live through this, and tell us what he said, and we will hear and we will do." Or in another section, "We will do and we will hear." So that may be a subject for a future conversation. The idea being, though, it is not simply given to one person and that one person shares it with everybody. And with it being passed down through the traditions over time, and in fact in the Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, the first chapter is dedicated to the generation by generation, person by person, group by group, passing down of the Torah and the oral tradition. So the idea being is that not just one person brought it to us, but that a group of people heard it. And since the Bible tells that a group of people heard it, that's one of the arguments for the divine origin of the Torah, is the fact that you don't ever see anybody saying, "No, wait a minute, we never heard of this. What are you talking about? When did our forefathers meet God at Sinai?" So anyway. And then the next section is Torah, the source of ultimate truth. As a more liberal Jew, or perhaps I should say progressive, I'm orthodox in my observance and I would say probably conservadox in my theology. Um, but whenever I hear truth with a capital T, when somebody wants to tell me the truth, I'm really kind of ready to run in the opposite direction, whether that be politically or what, or in this case, religiously. I don't think any of us have the truth, capital T, capital T. I think we have our particular religion, faith, whatever word you want to use, which is a particular walk with the Almighty and the divine, and that we all walk in the light that we're given. So don't come to me to tell me the truth because I'm not sure that you have it. And I'm not sure that I have it, so I'm not trying to claim any superiority. All right, so on page 45, we're going to move on to the purpose of revelation. Having established the first of his premises, namely revelation of the Torah, the Hinuk proceeds to a consideration of the question of divine purpose, specifically the very purpose of revelation. What, he asked, was God's objective in giving the Torah to man? The simple answer, the Hinuk avers at first, is that the mind of man is incapable of comprehending the ways of its creator, and hence, while the reason eludes us, we believe that God's revelation of the Torah was for a necessary purpose. Still in the same heading, and now moving on to God's design. Nevertheless, the Hinuk continues to probe for a more satisfying answer. Man's knowledge of God's ways, he explains, is a necessary consequence of God's own perfection. Since God is perfect, the world which he created must carry out to perfection his ultimate design in its creation. Of all creatures on the earth, man alone was endowed with intelligence, having been formed of both body and intellect. Man was created in this manner so as to have cognition of God, which he attains through his wisdom and intelligence. It follows of necessity, therefore, that man should know and acknowledge his Creator in order to complete the design in his creation. Were it not for the Torah, which God gave us, man's intellect would be completely drawn after his material nature with all of its lusts, and he would be like the beasts that perish. Consequently, the work of creation would not be complete, since man and beast would be the same in essence, though different in form, resulting in a deficiency in creation. Excuse me. So, under God's design, I think part of what I understand from this and part of what I've believed for years is that, and this is no disrespect to our Christian brethren, but the purpose of life and the purpose of God putting us on this planet seem to me to have to be more than just getting other people to go to heaven with us. And in fact, if that was the purpose of life, then why didn't God just put us in heaven to begin with? So for me, God's design is rather that we are the only creature on the planet that can acknowledge or in any way interact with God. You know, there's that old adage, if a tree falls in the woods and no one is around, does it make a noise? Well, yes, it does, but there's nobody to hear it. The noise is there, but there's no comprehension of it. And I think it's the same with God. If it weren't for man, God indeed would exist, but nobody would know it. And so I think that is indeed our purpose in life, is to know and become more like our Creator. In speaking of man's dual nature, the Hinuk employs here the term sekel, S-E-K-E-L, which, though usually taken to refer to the rational faculty of the soul, is here used in a wider sense. Speaking elsewhere of the interdependence of body and soul in man, the Hinoch uses the terms sekel and nefesh, which is another word for soul, interchangeably. The reference in this context then is clearly to man's spiritual nature in contrast to his material nature. The import of Hinoch's argument is that were it not for the Torah, man's spiritual nature would deteriorate and be drawn after his material nature, thereby thwarting God's design. As to God's purpose, therefore, in giving the Torah to man, we are persuaded by reason to assume that man's knowledge of the ways and the will of God revealed therein is thus part of the divine plan. Having willed the creation of the world, it must be perfect, reflecting God's own perfection. The Torah is indispensable in the perfection of man, in that it affords him the means of retaining the distinctiveness of his nature, which distinguishes him from other created beings. Hence, the object of Torah is to enable man to attain his full intellectual and spiritual stature, so that he may know his Creator and serve him. The question of divine purpose in Revelation is similarly propounded by Sadia. I remember the Sadia Gaon that we spoke about previously, relative to God's motive in creation. Proceeding from the premise that man is the end and intended purpose of creation, and consistent with his view that the final aim of God's creation is the good of his creatures, Sadia maintains that God's intention in Revelation was to endow man with the means of attaining happiness and well-being. Now, his first act of kindness towards his creatures consisted, and this is a quotation, in his giving them being, his calling them into existence after a state of non-being. He also endowed them with the means whereby they might attain complete happiness and perfect bliss, the commandments and the prohibitions prescribed for them by God. Maimonides, on the other hand, in an initial discussion of his Guide of the Perplexed, summarily, that's a hard word for me, rejects the anthropocentric notion of the world held by Sadia, and takes the view that the question of purpose in creation invariably invokes a series of successive purposes which revolve themselves only in the final answer. It is the will of God. He concludes, thus must be our belief when we have a correct knowledge of our own self and comprehend the true nature of everything. We must be content and not trouble our mind with seeking a certain final cause for things that have none, or have no other final cause but their own existence, which depends upon the will of God, or if you prefer, the divine wisdom. In the latter discussion, however, he apparently articulates the more traditional view held by the Sadia and the Hinoch. Abravanel, in the attempt of resolving the problem, suggests that the question of purpose may be addressed either in respect of the creator or of the created. It is only with regard to the former that the Rambam deems it inappropriate to seek any purpose other than the will and wisdom of God. It may be noted that Maimonides is, moreover, in accord with the Aristotelian view, which, while it cannot countenance the notion of an ultimate purpose to creation, because it holds it to be the necessary effect of God and not of the result of divine intention, yet maintains a teleological view of the world. There is manifest a sense of imminent purposiveness with the created world itself. While paralleling the Aristotelian view in the development of his thesis, Rambam proceeds from a different premise, to be sure, inasmuch as he accepts the traditional view of creation. The Hinoch's methodology here is of interest in that he follows a line parallel to that of both Maimonides and Sadia, adopting at the first the position of Maimonides and then suggesting substantially the argument advanced by Sadia in a somewhat modified form. So the next section is why was the Torah given to Israel? And I'm going to read that chapter over, the election of Israel, and so forth, and then move on to the Messianic hope. Hopefully these will be interesting to you guys as well. If I run into too much that just kind of pushes in any direction or another, I tend to just kind of step back on that. Just showed you my dog. So anyway, hope y'all are having a good day and a good night, and have a good week, and I'll get back with you probably Wednesday evening. Thanks. Bye-bye.